Hi, this is Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow for Expansions.com, and of course standing in for Stuart Swerdlow is my most favorite kitty, Solomon, who's growing, as you can see, and he's still a kitten, so who knows how big he's going to be. Anyway, this is our podcast for the last week of May 2019, and as always, I went through the news and found some interesting stories for you this week, so Solomon and I will tell you about them. First of all, North Korea, of course, continues to be in the news. North Korea, specifically its official Korean Central News Agency, labeled Joe Biden, who's the U.S. presidential hopeful, a fool of low IQ and an imbecile bereft of elementary quality as a human being. Now, he said that the news agency said that the former American vice president committed an intolerable and seriously politically motivated propagation against the North. We have Luna also chiming in. She's our Bengal cat and she doesn't like to be televised, but she wants you to know that she is there. Anyway, Biden, during a campaign launch in Philadelphia, accused President Donald Trump of cozying up to dictators and tyrants like Kim and Russian President Vladimir Putin. KCNA said that Biden had gone reckless and senseless, seized by ambition for power, and then it went on to mention apparent Biden gaffes, such as appearing to fall asleep during a speech by ex-President Barack Obama. During 2017, before Kim and Trump made their peace, so to speak, Kim called Trump a mentally deranged U.S. dotard after he said that the United States would totally destroy North Korea if forced to defend itself or its allies. Of course, we know that the North's description of Trump has improved after Kim initiated diplomacy with Washington and Seoul in 2018. Now, President Trump said that he actually agrees with Kim Jong-un in his assessment of Joe Biden as a swamp man and a low IQ individual, according to White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Apparently, Sanders said on NBC's Meet the Press that they agree in their assessment of former Vice President Joe Biden, and then she was asked about a tweet where Trump wrote that he smiled at Kim's description of the former vice president. Sanders also said that the North Korean missile test was not bothering the president. She said that he had tweeted that North Korea fired off some small weapons which disturbed some of my people and others, but not me. I have confidence that Chairman Kim will keep his promise to me. And of course, he later deleted the tweet, but he reposted it with Biden's name spelled correctly. So, moving right along to Israel, and its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that he intends to introduce a resolution to have a new Jewish settlement named after President Donald Trump in gratitude for Trump's decision to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. After 52 years, Trump tweeted, "It is time for the U.S. to fully recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which is of critical strategic and security importance to the state of Israel and regional stability." So I haven't heard anything further about what exactly he's going to call the settlement, but there you go. And then I have some news for you that you might have been following about the Equality Act, which is going to be making a big impact on the LGBTQ plus community. So I wanted to give you just a little bit of background on some of the research that I have done, and I will start with telling you about a story that I told you about when it happened. This was back in July of 2012. There was a man in Colorado who owned a family-owned cake shop, and a gay couple came in wanting him to make a cake to help them celebrate their marriage. But because of his religious beliefs, Phillips declined to bake the cake. So instead of going somewhere else, this couple filed a complaint with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission alleging discrimination based on sexual orientation. Now, the court ordered Phillips either bake the cake celebrating the gay marriage or quit designing any and all wedding cakes. It sounds like it was restricting Phillips' right to free speech, and that's my point, is about the free speech here. He was also commanded to re-educate his employees so they would understand that he was wrong to be a Christian while operating his business. In other words, the court was asking Phillips to violate his own conscience and his faith, or he would lose his livelihood and his family would starve. Now, eventually this case wound up in the Supreme Court, and they did rule in his favor. However, the findings were based on Colorado's civil rights bureaucrats. Findings were based, or the court never ruled on the question of whether a business owner could be forced to violate his or her own conscience. Colorado authorities then targeted Phillips again because he did not want to create a cake celebrating a gender transition by a man who was planning to have his genitals surgically removed to become a woman. So again, Phillips filed a lawsuit against the Colorado authorities, and he claimed that they were waging a, get this word, crusade, because we've talked about this many times, a crusade to crush him for his belief that an individual's sex is given by God and cannot be chosen or changed. And at that point, the state attorney general backed off. So I want you to keep this story in mind as we move along, because the Equality Act, the critics are claiming that it would criminalize Christianity. So apparently, the Democrats introduced LGBT equality legislation, which would ban discrimination. But the critics say that this would not only criminalize Christianity, but also Islam and Judaism, by forcing virtually every institution in society, including religious institutions, to hire, serve, and promote gay and individuals confused about their gender. Now, a number of analysts have warned that by enshrining sexual orientation and gender identity in the statute, which would embed these concepts into the 1964 Civil Rights Act, that even pedophilia and pederasty would be protected as a sexual orientation. Now, I didn't know what pederasty meant, so I looked that one up, and apparently it's defined as generally as anal intercourse between an older man and a male who is underage. So that's what they're claiming. Now, the Equality Bill specifically states that religious freedom may not be used as a defense under this bill. And this legislation would then apply to churches, religious schools, religious hospitals, religious employers, gathering places, sports, all government entities, and more. And Christian adoption agencies will be shut down if they refuse to place children with gay couples or individuals who are confused about their sexual orientation. Now, on May 17, 2019, the Equality Act did pass the United States House of Representatives, and it's currently awaiting consideration by the U.S. Senate. And again, critics under the bill, to continue on, it said if it's passed into law, that a biological man would be able to say that he identifies as a woman and be granted entry to a woman's... Sorry, we've got Solomon here wanting to get a little too involved with the camera. Get back over here, guy. Get back over here, little guy. Get back over here. There we go. Maybe. Let's see. Let's put him in his box bed. All right, there we go. Okay. Okay, so under the provisions of the bill, a biological man would be able to simply say that he identifies as a woman, and then he would be granted entry to a woman's domestic violence shelter, or he could find employment in a woman's sports league. This bill would cast aside the right of biological women. For example, in Anchorage, Alaska, there's a similar law in place which allows biological men who identify as women to go to the women's shelter and sleep only 3 feet away from these women who have experienced rape, sex trafficking, and domestic violence. The Equality Act would also open up shower facilities, restrooms, and locker rooms to members of the opposite sex in schools, like what's already happening in Pennsylvania. Now, moving along in the same vein, on this past Friday, the Trump administration formally proposed to roll back Obama-era civil rights safeguards that had banned discrimination against transgender medical patients and health insurance customers. The Department of Health and Human Services proposed regulation that would replace a 2016 rule from the Obama administration that defined discrimination on the basis of sex to include gender identity. The Trump administration rule would no longer recognize gender identity as an avenue for sex discrimination. Now, with the Obama-era language, healthcare workers would be free to object to performing procedures or without the, sorry, I'm focusing here on Solomon, making sure he doesn't destroy the camera as well. Without the Obama era language, healthcare workers would be free to object to performing procedures like gender reassignment surgery, and insurers would not be bound to cover all services for transgender customers. The Obama administration adopted the healthcare discrimination rule to carry out a civil rights provision of the Affordable Care Act. The Obama administration included gender identity as an aspect of sex and specified that the term means a person's internal sense of gender, which might be male, female, neither, a combination of male and female, and which may be different from an individual's sex assigned at birth. The Obama-era definition of discrimination also protected women who had terminated a pregnancy. However, a group of states and religious medical providers sued, and in December of 2016, a federal judge in Fort Worth blocked that section of the rule on a temporary basis, writing that Congress did not understand sex to include gender identity. The judge has yet to issue a final ruling, and a nationwide preliminary injunction remains in place. Now, last year, Mr. Roger Severino, who's the director of the Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services, said that the agency would not seek to define sex. However, he did push last year for a legal definition of sex. That was last year. This year, now he's saying they would not seek for the definition of the sex, because according to the health department, sex means a person's status as male or female based on immutable biological traits identifiable by or before birth. The sex listed on a person's birth certificate as originally issued shall constitute definitive proof of a person's sex unless rebutted by reliable genetic evidence. Now there's another case on which it has to do with the meaning of sex discrimination right now before the Supreme Court. This term, the court will consider whether Title VII bars discrimination against gay and transgender people in the workplace. The health department's proposed rule came 2 weeks after Mr. Severino announced a separate, expanded conscience rule to protect healthcare workers who oppose abortion, sterilization, assisted suicide, and other medical procedures on religious or moral ground. Now you want to remember, if people protest, they could lose their jobs, and this is going to protect them, so if they don't feel comfortable doing these things, they can keep their jobs. Jocelyn Samuels, who ran the Office for Civil Rights under President Barack Obama, said the revised rule would undermine Congress's intent to expand access to health care and health coverage, adding that it would inflict extraordinary damage on vulnerable Americans. And my feeling is, which I've told you many times before, is that this is a rule, this transgender agenda has to do with New World religion, totally confusing people, putting in androgyny where people are not androgynous, allowing for increased programming to happen, and we don't want to see this happen. So that was what Obama was putting into place, and Mr. Trump is doing his best to reverse this. So it's not a protection of anybody, it's a way to allow people to become more confused. And as we've talked about many times on this podcast, there are many people living many different lifestyles, but that's different than people going in and medically altering themselves with hormones or surgery just because they can. And a lot of people are doing such things, and they are regretting it and having a lot of problems as a result. So, like I said, a lot of things are going on. This Equality Act is really big, and you want to be following that as you move along. Now, kind of along the same vein, in Canada, that they are moving, they've got a bill in front of their legislature to ban Christians from demonstrating in public under a new anti-hate proposal. The Canadian province of Ontario is considering legislation that would officially criminalize Christianity. The legislation proposed in the Canadian province of Ontario would criminalize public displays by Christians that are deemed hateful by Muslims, the LGBT community, and other victim groups. And as you know, I don't like the term victim groups. If you call yourself a victim, you're going to be a victim, so don't call yourself a victim. Now, the issue they're claiming, at least the people who are opposing this bill, say that the definition of hate is uncertain under Canadian law, just like we talked about the definition of sex on the Equality Act. So the use of hate can be a useful tool for some to prevent differing views from being expressed. The word hate can be used to silence opposing views expressed when in fact the views are simply a reasonable expression of belief. As Canada becomes more restrictive toward Christianity, they open their arms for the LGBT agenda and Islam to take a foothold in their culture. And interestingly enough, I don't think I reported on it, but you might have seen that the Royal Canadian Mint issued a commemorative coin last month to celebrate gay love as a core principle of Canadian society. And again, I don't think that sexuality is something that should be legislated. Just be who you are, do what you do, and we don't have to have rules and regulations. Just everybody's different. Everybody's got their thing. The issue is you don't want to be what other people are telling you are, and you don't want to become that just because it's in or cool. There are people who have been our clients for many, many years who are transgender people, and before it all became an agenda, there were people who legitimately were going through specific processes. Or, as I said, there are people who are genuinely gay or genuinely lesbian, and some who are just, riding the tide. So there's a whole bunch of things going on. You want to be sure and read our book, 13 Cubed. Okay, this has to do with programming, and I don't have it with me, but my True Reality of Sexuality book is very important for you to be reading and understanding, as well as the Hyperspace Helper, which gives you basic exercises to control your own mind so other people don't control it for you. Now, speaking of people and the destruction of our society, there is a magazine called The Nation magazine that claims we should end capitalism by destroying the family. And that's what all this agenda is about putting you so that your family becomes the state. So there's a book by Sophie Lewis, and let me get here, make sure I'm on the right page. Okay, so her new book is called Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against the Family, written in 2019. She's a feminist theorist and geographer, and she says specifically that she links family abolition to a radical reconceptualization of pregnancy itself. The act of carrying a child to term, she says, is work, and I agree with that. However, then she goes on to say that this is labor that has been exploited and overlooked by the Academy, and so is mothering. Interesting, May is the month of Mother's Day. She goes on to say that something I want to challenge, the idea that babies belong to anyone, the idea that the product of gestational labor gets transferred as property to a set of people. In other words, you have a baby, shouldn't necessarily belong to you just because you went through the labor of having it. She said that children should belong to no one but themselves, and if there were no such thing as a parent, the government would have to set in and force the child, for example, to eat a healthy diet. So now you've made the child a vassal of the state, meaning he is still not a being who belongs only to himself. He or she now belongs to the country. So even so, some of these things sound like they're on the fringe right now. I've been telling you about this for years, how they're destroying the family, they're destroying everything about this country, and they're trying to make you vow your allegiance to the government so the government controls everybody. So be aware of what's happening and don't participate in these agendas. Now, I've also been talking to you quite a bit about all these abortion deals that are going on right now. And as you know, there's been some very restrictive ones that have been passed. And actress Anne Hathaway now is tying this to our white privilege movements that's out there. Again, another way to destroy people, because we can't say black privilege or we can't say, other kind of privilege, but now we have a white privilege, right? So Anne Hathaway is slamming the complicity of the white women supporting abortion bans. I also told you about Alyssa Milano, who called for a sex strike in protest, but I don't know how that's going to help. And then Pink has lashed out at white male Alabama state senators who passed a bill making it illegal to get an abortion after 6 weeks, even in cases of rape or incest. And then Anne Hathaway is jumping on, talking about how 2 white women also helped usher in the controversial legislation. So again, why do we have to talk about race? Why do we have to talk about gender? These are legislators doing whatever legislators do. Let them be that. Let them do what they feel they need to do. And in France, hundreds of black vest migrants seized the terminal in Paris airport and yelled, "France does not belong to the French." Hundreds of undocumented migrants took control of Terminal 2 of the Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Approximately 500 migrants seized the terminal and yelled, "France does not belong to the French. Everyone has a right to be here." Now, this migrant group, or the protest, was organized by the migrant support group called La Chapelle des Boues, which said their members call themselves Black Vests. Now, of course, we've been talking to you also about the Yellow Vest movement, and which I didn't realize this until this article. Maybe you did, but it says that French citizens are required to carry yellow vests in their vehicles for emergencies. And of course, people are wearing those for tax protests. Now, the group asked to meet with Prime Minister Edouard Philippe over the country's asylum policy and the leaders of Air France, because they demanded that the airline stop any financial, material, logistical, or political participation in deportations. So last week, an Air France delegation met with the group, and then a migrant who took part in the protest warned that it would not be the last protest, and went on to say, "We have targeted Air France and other actions will follow." And this is what Stuart and I have been telling you: stop the violence before it starts. If you know these groups are out there and people are saying things, I talked about the Extinction Rebellion saying the same thing, that they were going to get violent. This group is basically saying that they're going to get violent. So why aren't these people being stopped before things happen? And then here we go with another religious sort of discrimination. I'll put that, I'm saying that very loosely, alleged discrimination, I'll say. In the UK, a doctor might lose his job because because first of all, they say he asked the Muslim woman to remove the veil, but then he said she took it off on her own. So apparently this doctor in the UK had a female patient come in with her daughter with a health issue, but he couldn't hear her because of the veil and asked that she please remove it. So apparently she willingly took it off. Now, Dr. Keith Wolverson, who's been practicing medicine for 23 years, said that the woman willingly complied, but apparently her husband found out and the husband filed a complaint. So the doctor said, "I'm not racist. This has nothing to do with race, religion, or skin color. I've treated women in the past who have worn similar veils, but on those occasions I've never even had to ask them to remove it. They just did." Now, the formal complaint claims that the woman did not want to remove the veil on religious grounds, but the doctor said he would not continue the consultation if she refused. And the doctor has not been allowed to go back to work since the complaint was made, and he could possibly lose his job over the situation. So, again, craziness. And more craziness in Spain. There was a squash competition, the Asturias Championship, apparently. And during the awarding of the trophies, female competitors were not only given a trophy, but they were also awarded additional prizes such as a vibrator and a wax hair removal kit. Now, obviously, the women were upset. Elizabeth Sado, who finished in first place, was not only given a trophy but a vibrator for winning the tournament, and she was pictured appearing aghast at the revelation when being presented with her unusual selection of prizes. Now, the men did not receive anything other than a trophy. So obviously it was a very sexist thing, and the women have filed suit, and several people have been let go over this travesty, I'm going to call it. Nonsense. Middle school. Okay, no safe place for children, in my opinion. 2 teachers at Central Park School for Children in Durham, North Carolina, decided to enlist the help of local drag queens to celebrate the unique differences between the school's students. These 2 teachers said that the impact of bullying and other negative behavior was having on students in their school who identify as LGBTQ, that some of the students were even considering leaving the school as a result. So last December, the 2 teachers pitched a school-wide event to help students understand what that means to be different. Our drive, remember, this is middle school children, 8th grade. Our drive was to remove barriers to success, belonging, and the ability to thrive for all students. So, of course, what do? They turned to drag queens. That makes sense, right? And the drag queens, Vivica C. Cox and Stormy Day of the House of Cox. That's very appropriate for 8th graders, right? These are the people they enlisted. And they called this the Pride and Liberation event. And then it goes on to say that the House of Cox Drag House has been an advocate for social and racial issues in the Durham area for years. They're often asked to do events around the community advocating for racial and social justice. The event lasted 2 hours and featured a panel with a city council member and a performance by the school step team and, of course, a drag show. When you want your 8th grader attending this, so this is what's going on in public schools, people. And this story is it's kind of an older story, this next one, but I brought it up simply because it's out there, and again, it has to do with program. Remember what I just told you. Don't let somebody else control your mind. This is called Object Love. When people fall for pool toys, bridges, and the Statue of Liberty. Now, according to Dr. Amy Marsh, who's a sexologist, she said that this type of relationship is more common than you might think. She said sexual or affectionate romantic orientation consists of people who have very robust, rich, sexual, complex relationships with an object or maybe a number of objects. Apparently, she completed the world's only study on objectum sexuality, they should call it programming, where she interviewed dozens of people, and she claims that it has nothing to do with childhood trauma or previous bad relationships. She concludes that it's real love and it's uncontrollable and it's power. She said there are different forms of sensory perception. I guess you would say where you might smell colors or taste sounds, there's a form called object personification in synesthesia, where you can sense personality in objects. That's very real for the person who has that going on. That I believe because it's programming. But the object itself is irrelevant as long as it has emotional value to the person. These can vary in size from fisheye buttons to the Eiffel Tower or the Berlin Wall, and the article talks about a woman who actually married a bridge in France, which was a Bridge of the Devil. I can't remember it in French, but anyway, you can look it up on the link if you want. But this, again, is all programming. And aliens, one of your favorite topics, I know. And if you want to read some very interesting story on aliens, you want to read Stewart's autobiography, Montauk, Alien Connection, great book. And of course, things that he learned during the Montauk, his Montauk years, Blue Blood, True Blood, which has to do about galactic history as well as true world history, followed by True World History here, which is also going to tell you things that you didn't know about, but you need to know. So aliens. Ghostbusters Dan Aykroyd says that aliens are here. He claims he's seen 4 UFOs and that most extraterrestrial visitors are just tourists coming to look at the beautiful planet. But then he goes on and he says they want to have sex with human women. He said that he is concerned that some aliens want to harm people and use them as lab rats. He's also convinced that 60% of people already know that it's true, and he claims the proof is going to start dribbling out. Then he goes on to say the aliens are interested in your ova, your femininity, your reproductive parts, your DNA. They would love to draw blood and fluid and would love to impregnate a woman and produce a hybrid baby. This is what they're up to here. I believe some aliens are here to harm us. There are many that come here with nefarious purposes and want to use us as lab rats. Excuse me. He's 66 years old, and he's among a growing number of people who are celebrities. That's what they do. They take these programming icons and they have them say things, and you see it, and the next thing you know, all of a sudden it's true. So like I've been telling you, you want to take control of your own mind before other people take control of it for you. Hyperspace Helper is a really good beginning, basic book if you want to learn how to take care of your own mind before somebody else does it for you. If you want to learn more about our work and what we do, be sure you subscribe and get a membership to our website, expansions.com, less than $1 a day. And of course, with a YouTube video, I'm going to tell you that about every 2 to 3 videos now, they are marking us as limited viewership only. So I'm beginning to expect that. And even though we have 18,000 subscribers, I know they're playing with our numbers because it's only showing that about 2,000, maybe 3,000 people are watching, and it's much more widespread than that. So y'all have social media pages. Take our podcast, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And let's get the word out there that you don't have to go along with these agendas and things that are being planned for you. It's time for you to take control of your own mind, your own life. Expansions.com, that's what we're all about. We have been around, believe it or not. I have been doing expansions for almost 40 years. Long time, a lot of information out there. So you want to partake in that. Don't miss out. Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow for expansions.com.